just know it's like when my dad's calling Africa, you not calling Nigeria. There's always a 5 second pause before
I
anyone
know,
speaks.
I know that. That was a good reference. That was a good reference. It brought back very strong memories of those calls, especially when I was younger. Hello, and you're there, and it's either there's a really big lag or you're talking, but like they're answering a question as you're asking. Yeah, okay.
Right, that's how you know the pros. It's like if my mom's ever speaking on the phone, my mom's like, oh, "Wait, let me." I was talking. Okay, you go, you go. My dad is just quiet for 30 seconds because he knows
Yeah,
it's going through the ether, through the connections until they come back to you.
yeah.
Okay, well, let's get this underway. Everybody,
Okay.
easy spotlight today. Returning guest, Mr. Mohammed Hammer Sesay. Glad to have you back. You're in Malaysia. You're always somewhere different.
No,
What have you been doing on your travels this time?
this is not true. I feel like I'm building up a false reputation of being someone who's constantly on the move. Whereas it is true that I travel a little bit, and maybe, I tend to post more when I'm traveling. So this feeds into this sort of fallacy, but I'm not on the move as much as people think. I'm in Malaysia because my sister lives here, and I'm actually on a bit of a break from work, and I haven't visited her, so I was like, okay, let me come and visit her. But yeah, I'm heading back tomorrow, so it's just a quick trip.
So it's just the social media world. It's just your perception that you're putting out there that you're on this go person. So the
Yeah,
last time we chatted was just over 2 years ago, and at that point we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about
yeah,
what you do in your day-to-day job, a humanitarian officer, Doctors with Borders. At that
yeah,
time, it was just before you were going to move to Senegal
and
and start
yeah,
your position there. We talked
yeah,
about your work with the Keep It Facts charity and supporting girls in Sierra Leone. And then we also talked about your hat company, AFRICAP,
yeah,
cycling hats that are worn for style. And so,
yeah,
just to give people who have listened to that episode before a quick snapshot of over the last 2
yeah.
years, what are the updates in terms of
Oh,
yourself and those different ventures that you've gone on?
oh, I was thinking it's kind of like poetic, the timing of this, because as you said, at that point, I was just on the verge of starting a new job in Senegal with Doctors Without Borders. So it's been, well, that was November 2021. I ended my contract with them at the end of last year, so crossroads again. I decided to take a bit of a break for at least 3 months, have time to myself, and then I'll probably look to get back in employment as soon as possible at the end of March. So unfortunately, my time in Senegal has come to an end. I really enjoyed myself, and maybe I might go back and stay for longer. That's where I am professionally, if you like. In relation to Keep It Facts, still going along. I can't remember in detail what we spoke about. I think we mainly reminisced on the fundraising events, how you got to know the charity, and we talked about the bike rides and what led me to found it in the first place. I think today the focus is on getting it to a stage where my input is sort of minimal, and that the staff that we've been working with on training are able to manage it themselves. So hopefully we'll get to, like, the objective is that my input will mainly be sort of financial, securing funding, and maybe the odd event here and there, but that it will be able to run on its own legs. We're still working with one of the same schools that we have been working with from the start. We've kind of expanded some of the scope of our program, so we are trying to make it a bit more interactive, get presentations, take the girls on school trips, add I won't say non-traditional elements. I mean, academic is like the foundation of education, I would say, but we're trying to include more and more extracurricular activities and vocational skills. We do have ambitions, to sort of arrange internships or placements or programs, but there's the there's the dream and then there's the reality, and that comes with challenges. But it's hard work. It's still a lot of hard work, but I'm glad that it's still going in some shape or form. And then I would say AFRICAP has probably seen the most changes from our last conversation. I remember, again, I said it was poetic because you and your mum, sorry, were my first customers. And since then, we've expanded. We've got at least, I think, up to 10 stores now who stock our products in the UK and Europe, coming for that American market. Now that's my target for this year. Increase our presence still within the UK and Europe, but I really want to target that juicy capitalist state, that country that you live in. There's the Tour de Lunsar as well, which we've been sponsoring, and I got to participate in last year. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case this year. I wanted to go back with a team, but yeah, I would say those are the main updates.
So much to unpack.
Yeah.
I love all the updates, but I want to just start right at the start then, because one thing that's interesting that you just said is that you've taken some time off. Now, was that, and it seems like a bit of an extended period of time.
Yeah.
Is that by choice in terms of I am going to choose for myself to take a sabbatical? I want to kind of step back from stuff. A lot of people are going through, a lot of professional decisions. People are wanting to align their jobs. People are wanting to, do something that's completely different. So what was your motivation to do that?
My motivation, it was definitely my choice. And my motivation was that, when you are working, you usually get a period of time, annual leave or whatever, and you try and fit everything into the days that you're given. But you don't get that much time to yourself. So I think the dream is, or the objective is always to have a job which you love, but not all of us are fortunate to be able to do that. So it's not that I would say we live from holiday to holiday, but it puts a lot of emphasis on holidays. And depending on the period you're in at work, sometimes you're going to have time to yourself, sometimes you're not. As you said at the beginning, that you weren't able to get back into easy, So I thought, okay, I'm going to look for a job. And then I thought, oh, maybe I'll take a month off. And then I was like, oh, no, let me do it properly. Let me give myself at least 3 months. Because even with that time period, there's a physical, I would say, a physical time off, and then there's the mental time off. So it takes time to switch off, from being used to going to work, thinking that you need a job, and then actually being in a mental space where you're not thinking about these things. And if all your friends are in work or people you're close to in work and they're talking about these things, that can also impact you and make you think, oh yeah, I need to start doing this. So that's why I think I gave myself this period of time. There's also a lot going on. I went to Saudi in January. I knew I wanted to go to the African Cup of Nations. I knew I wanted to see my sister, and I was like, okay, I'm going to need a lot of time to do this.
What's been your shift in your mind then, in your mental state? Because I think it's so true that when you have a holiday, it's not enough time for you to really detach from work. You still know it's on the horizon. So what's happened with you over this time in your mental state, and where are you now being separated from work? How do you go about your days that is different to how you usually would?
That is a good question, and I don't think I can really answer it because, I think during this period from January to now, I think there's only been 10 days or 2 weeks where I have just been at home, relaxing or chilling. So I don't have like a typical day to day. I am hoping when I get back, for the rest of Ramadan, that I'll just stay at home and be able to build some sort of a routine. But as I said, I was traveling in the beginning. I know at the beginning of the conversation, I said I'm not always on the move, but during during January, I've constantly been on the move, so I haven't really, been able to just sort of relax. Although I have in a different way, here and there. I would say as well, to answer your question, if there's a change, I would say as you get older, but it's definitely age. I think if I was younger, I would never have even dreamed of taking this much time off or having a break. But age gives you perspective, and work is important, but it's not the most important thing.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah,
think in your job in particular, your job is one that takes you away from home. You know,
yeah,
where you grew up, where you've been. You're always, not to say that you're on the go, but you're always in
yeah,
somewhere that is not your home, not your homeland, not your home state, and
yeah,
more so, you're in developing countries. You're in countries that
yeah,
are needing help, the countries that are changing. And I want to
yeah.
kind of stay on that a little bit today because you have a unique perspective from the way you see the world. I think a lot of people don't even get to touch a country, ever go to Africa, regardless, go to Asia, and you're
Yeah.
really integrated. So, what do you think people misunderstand about developing countries?
Whoa, that is a good question. Yeah. How I guess I guess people. I mean, I think it depends who you talk to. I think from the conversation I have, or maybe I'm fortunate, but there isn't that much of a misconception, I would say, of what developing countries are. I think possibly since social media has come on and people within these countries are able to tell stories for themselves or take ownership and show, this is our reality. So people, and then also as well, me posting and I'm interacting with my friends, so they see what I'm doing, and I'll get comments like, "Oh, your life in Senegal looks really good." But then, obviously, when I travel to the field and I'm in countries with conflict or displacement, that gives a reality of the sort of challenges. But um, to try and answer your question, I think I would say that people probably don't realize that there's different ways to live, if that makes sense. So we might think that, in the UK, because we have certain things, you have to have a car, a TV, a house, a mortgage, etc., that's what you need to be comfortable in life. But I would say I've seen through my travels that there are things that, yeah, they don't have, but people in the countries I live in tend to have. One of these things I'll say is good weather, for example. Good weather. I know it sounds cheesy or maybe cliche, but this makes such a difference. When you wake up and you're going to see the sky, you're going to see the sun, and that you're going to get good weather from one period of the year to whenever, this can really impact how you live. So, like I would say in Senegal, people are always outside because they can be. Senegal has a reputation. Well, I mean, and they deserve to have this reputation for being one of the fittest countries. And having been within West Africa, there's definitely a difference between the Senegalese and the other West Africans. But in general, within the region of West Africa, you will see people outside more.
I think you may have a specific, because you're so close to it, and your point on social media and the people around you will
Yeah,
almost live that, right? That
yeah,
makes sense that they'll see your Instagram. It's really
yeah,
nice put together. They see all these beautiful shots of people and they think, oh, wow, this is really nice. The angle I like to come at is from is, say I go to Nigeria
yeah,
and I'm there and I'm going to the village or whatnot. I think it's more to your point of there's different ways of living. And I
yeah,
think that's what's missed so much about maybe Western culture, that there's this way of living and this way of thinking that is the only thing that is right. Because I find it not, it's funny the right way. I love when the Nigerians' perspective of what they find interesting, what they find to be high society, or
yeah,
to be building up their culture.
yeah,
It just depending on what we bring into. in there, and it's just that viewpoint that I tend to find very interesting. But you being on the ground there so much, I think it, could be even different. It could be you more ingrained. Maybe you're not even noticing it as much, but I think a lot of people need to go and experience that in some way and somehow, just to go to a different country, go to Asia, just a different culture. It doesn't have to be, Africa. It could be anywhere else, but to have that perspective.
Yeah. I did lose you for a second.
It's okay. You're back and it's better quality
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
I cut off.
When you plan to go to Nigeria next?
Hopefully at Christmas. We haven't gone the last one because actually no, none of my family did because of a lot of trouble in Nigeria, and so it just wasn't safe to travel. But I think my dad's going back this year, and I'll hope to go back. But you mentioned the African Cup of Nations. I was following that. I need to hear. I need to hear this experience. Like, tell me about that. What the African Cup of Nations was like, and your experience being there.
Okay, so first of all, I need to shout out a couple of people because I'm going to first of all shout out Asim, then I'm going to shout out Mario because I was able to go because I was able to stay with a friend of a friend. And I think it's important to say, had someone not been hospitable and generous enough to let me stay with them, I wouldn't have gone. So shout out and thank you very much for that. Now, it was amazing. Like to summarize it, it was amazing. I had previously gone to an AFCON in 2019, I believe, in Egypt. And unfortunately, Egypt went out on the night that I arrived. So with the AFCON, it's a different kind of tournament to like the Euros or the World Cup. I think it's important for the host nation to come far because that really, I think in every tournament that allows the tournament to have life, and it there's a buy-in which is essential, I would say, because interstate travel in the continent or in Africa isn't so easy. I think another advantage of Ivory Coast is it shares so many borders with so many of the participants. So there's a big, and I think already migration within that country. You had a small Nigerian population present. You had a big Guinean population present. You had Senegalese. I met Senegalese people who had banked on Senegal getting to the final, and they had tickets for the quarterfinal, the semi-final, and the final. But no, I mean, first of all, AFCON, usually football only gets better in the second rounds or the knockout stages, but from the group stage, there's a lot of drama. And the Ivorians, they were eliminated. They were eliminated, and then they got lucky and were back in the tournament. And I have to say, being able to, I live in Senegal. I have an affinity for the Senegalese. I wanted them to win, and I still feel a bit of a way about the Ivorian team winning. But I think that for their fans, I'm happy because they really had the best fans. Like, some of the atmosphere at the games is definitely the best I've ever experienced because, when you think about Africans, you think about passion, you think about dancing, you think about soul, and like seeing this at a football match is a completely different environment, I would say, compared to matches I've watched in the UK. It's still very serious. Like, you can see everyone cares about it, but you see more women, you see old people, you see young people. There isn't like a demographic which is associated with the sport. And I think as well, some of the matches I went to, like the quarterfinal I went to where they were losing to Mali, then they scored the equalizer at the 90th minute. Then they scored the winning goal at the 120th minute. I mean, as someone who played football yourself, you want to win every match comfortably, You want to get that 2-0 or 3-0 win. But when you win, when you've been suffering the whole match, when you snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, there's nothing better. And to experience that with a whole stadium. I mean, every African team has their national fans, who come dressed up and dance. I think by the 80th minute, the Ivorians, they'd stop drumming, they'd stop dancing, they thought they were out. So then once they scored and then the life comes back, really, like, I think when we watched the final, I was back in Senegal with a friend and we went to watch in an Ivorian restaurant that I go to watch. And the level of noise, at some point, his iWatch or smartwatch started beeping. You're in a really detrimental environment for your ears. Like, you should think about moving away if it continues, to give you a sense of the scale. But yeah, no, I'm very blessed and truly grateful to have been there. People are saying it's the best AFCON, and I believe it from what I experienced. Everyone, and as the tournament went on, you see more and more people wearing the Ivorian jersey. It's like Christmas in the sense that usually I find Christmas in Western countries, everyone tends to get happier and friendlier. There's this type of effect. And then I was wearing every jersey but Ivory Coast. So, people would stop me in the streets and be like, "Oh, you're supporting this team, but the cup is staying here." There's not a banter, and yeah, no, it was fun. It also helps that Ivory Coast, they have really good food. They love to party. They're easygoing, passionate, fun people. They're not difficult like, let's say, Nigerians.
Although you were wearing a Nigerian shirt on the last day.
Yeah, no, because from a football perspective, Nigeria deserved to win. I thought they grew into the tournament and they were the best team. Like, I don't think it was a victory for football that they lost. Although in the final, I don't know why they played the way they did. And the celebrations that we're all able to witness. There is something special about when a host nation wins the tournament. I wasn't in England when the Lionesses won the Euros, but I wish I'd been able to witness that.
100%. I think, one, I don't know what happened in that final game
Yeah,
for Nigeria, because I was on the phone to my dad screaming about, what am I watching? What am I witnessing right now? Do I need to get on this plane to Nigeria this second? Because the energy, the passion, it was
yeah,
defensive.
yeah,
Anyway, but yeah, I think you encapsulated it beautifully. I mean, one, a host nation doing it. I remember being in Paris for the Euros when it was in
yeah,
France, and just having them succeed, even though I don't
yeah,
want them to. It's an
yeah,
energy through every single
yeah,
day,
yeah,
through the way people are interacting, the way they're talking, what you're seeing in the streets, and so that I can imagine that was really special. So keeping on
mm,
sports, I want to just
yeah,
shift because there's something with AFRICAP that you've
yeah.
done in sponsoring Tour de Lunsar and
Oh
also
yeah,
participating in it and shedding
yeah,
light on it. Because for me, that has
yeah,
been one of the most interesting things I've seen through your pages, seen through
yeah,
AFRICAP, and just
yeah,
being able to get a light of something I didn't even know existed. And I think a lot of
yeah,
people who are interested in the cycling world would never know
yeah,
existed. You just don't think Tour de France, you just think white
yeah,
cyclists. Here's a whole
yeah, yeah,
race, largest race in West Africa, of
yeah,
people riding and passionate and training. So can you
yeah,
talk about how you got, how did you even get into that? How did you find out about that? And then going
yeah.
on to sponsoring.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. I have to say, I think it's the biggest. It's definitely the biggest race in Sierra Leone. I can't say it's the biggest cycling event in West Africa. I think there may be one in Ghana or even Burkina Faso, which is bigger. With that being said, yeah, so obviously in a lot of West African and a lot of African countries, football is the main sport. And also, I've been thinking I need to rebrand my Instagram because people keep telling me that, oh yeah, you love cycling, don't you? And I do like cycling, but football is my first and one true love. But there's a burgeoning or developing cycling scene in Africa, the continent, specifically in East Africa, in Eritrea, Rwanda. We have strong teams there. But cycling, I wasn't aware that this was a thing in Sierra Leone. Like most people you meet want to play football or aspiring footballers. I was loosely aware that there are cycling initiatives to help communities where transport is a bit of a difficulty. And eventually, when I started up AFRICAP, and I was thinking about like having a social or what kind of social impact we could have, that was when I discovered that there was this race which takes place called the Tour de Lunsar, which was founded by Karim, stylish Karim, as he's called, in the north of Sierra Leone in one of the mining towns called Lunsar. And he got into cycling from an early age. He met someone who owns a cycling publishing sort of company in the UK, and he helped him to establish this race, which used to be a local race where teams from the area would participate, and that went on for a couple of years. And then he wanted to make it bigger, wanted to have international participants, and also have participants regionally from Sierra Leone. So it made sense as a West African brand with its products created in Sierra Leone that we sponsor the race. And I always knew, being like, who I am, I like a challenge. And I'd gotten into cycling through Keep It Facts, as you know, that I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to do this one day. And then fortunately, last year was the year I was able to participate. And it was difficult. It's possibly the most difficult sporting activity I've ever done. And I thought I was well prepared. I hired a coach and I was training. I was in Senegal training. I think I did it at least 2 months, and I even trained during Ramadan. So, I was committed. But and another thing I said, I think this would link back to your first question about perception, is that people tend to categorize African countries as Africa, like people will say, oh yeah, Africa, whereas there's so many, there are a lot of similarities, which has allowed me to integrate when I've gone to different countries, but there are lots of differences. And one of these is climate. Like Senegal and Sierra Leone do not have the same climate at all. Sierra Leone is very humid and tropical. And this is something I realized on the first day, because Senegal is quite cool between November to July, maybe June. It's relatively cool, especially in the evenings. It gets cold. So I was doing about 80 kilometers and only consuming 2 bottles of water. When I got to Sierra Leone, I think, after half an hour of cycling, like I needed a bottle. I wasn't prepared. I think this event also allowed me to realize how much cycling is a team sport. I think if you follow cycling loosely, you hear about cyclists. You don't hear so much about the teams. You'll hear who won the Tour de France, or who won the Olympics. Like I can name individuals. I can't name many people who play in a team, but it really is a team sport. The way you cycle within a team allows you to maintain speed much more than you can individually. And also as well, the supports, the cars, the riders who provide you with water and fuel. You don't have this, you're not going to go very far. So every time I spoke about the Tour de Lunsar last year, I was using the African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And this is something I really learned through that experience. But as difficult as it was, I'm eager to go back. I wanted to do it again this year with my friends. Unfortunately, the planning is a bit difficult because, the UK winter isn't the best time to be able to train. And then the Tour de Lunsar is in April. So it doesn't give you like an optimum time to get the work in. But we've sat down and we're going to try and make a go of it next year. If you want to challenge Ryan, I don't know. I don't see you cycling much anymore. I just see golf. This might be something to aim for.
I would definitely want to get back to cycling. I've got torn labrums on my hips, and that's what's paused me. But we're on the way back. So, can you just explain though, because people won't understand what the format is of a team cycling event? Like, just as you said, they'll only know you cycle. So, what is the format?
Okay, so good. So the Tour de Lunsar typically is a 5-day competition. Yeah, 5-day competition. On the first day, you have the junior race in the morning, and then you have the female race in the afternoon. Then you have 4 days for the men race. But the junior race and the female race follow the same format as the men's race, but condensed into a shorter period. So for the men's race, what you had is destination and finish on day one. Day two would be what's called a crit. And a crit, I think, if you're not very familiar with cycling, you'll enjoy this. So a crit is where you have a closed track and you do laps. And when I did the Tour de Lens, so this was my first time racing crit. So I think depends on what the authorities decide. But last year they had like 12 laps crit. Then you ride from destination A, and you ride from destination A, do a loop and come back. The third day was then a different type of destination, A to B. But when I'm with more hill climbs, okay, and then the last day would be again another crit. So another closed circuit with the laps, and then out and then back again. Okay. So when you're cycling in teams, you'll have different teams who participate in this. And what happens is each team will identify who their strongest prospect is to win a race. And what happens is you will have, let's say you have a team of 5, you'll have one person at the front who sets the speed. This person sets the speeds, and then the 4 cyclists behind have to keep up with this speed. When the person at the beginning starts to drop in speed, the person behind takes over, the person in the front goes to the back, and the new person sets the speed. And this allows you to propel and continue to maintain a fast speed than if you're cycling individually. And to give you a great example, most participants of the Tour de Lunsar were in teams. There was a couple of us who entered individually, and I was one of them. So the first time I did the crits, I was like, okay, this is laps, I was going. I started to overtake people. I was getting all these emotions because you're in a closed circuit. You've got all these people on the sides. Go, 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 yeah, So like you get carried away, and I'm like, oh yeah, this I'm doing well here, And then you start to fatigue. Oh, it's hard for you to to maintain a speed or measure speed. And eventually I got lapped and was at the back. On the last day, I think a couple of us who didn't have teams were like, okay, let's ride together. And then we're in what's called a chain gang. Someone's in the front setting the speed. You have to keep up with them. When they signal that they're tiring out, then you go. And it's hard. It's harder than when you're riding individually, but it keeps you going. And my performance on that day compared to the second day was completely different. And I think, we even lapped some of the teams. And by the time we set off to go on the loop, that was the day I finished the best, actually. Just gives you a bit of an insight. Then
That's a
obviously,
great
it was a great. I don't know how many Sierra Leoneans or you've been around Sierra Leoneans. They're very dramatic. So, I particularly enjoyed watching the youth race because you see a lot of these young boys riding on pure emotion. Not many of them riding on knowledge. I think after the first lap, there is a crash. People are like riding too hard. There's just so many crashes or spectacular falls or incidents, and then people crying. I saw the whole gamut of emotions. But just a lot of passion.
I think people who have never watched a crit race, as you
Yeah,
said, that is something you'd love. It's exciting.
yeah,
It's very fast. It's
yeah,
constant. It's constant action. But also,
yeah,
people don't really understand who are not in cycling. If you're cycling
yeah,
in a peloton, as
yeah,
you described, but behind people, it's also dangerous because
yes,
you're cycling at really fast speed. You've got to be really in tune with your team. You've got to be
yeah.
really in tune with every single person around
It's
you.
true.
So
Yeah,
for
it's
you to
true.
say that there's lots of crashes and stuff, that's no
Mm,
surprise, especially in
yeah.
a place where it's not a lot of experienced
Yes. Yeah.
cyclists.
Yeah.
But what was the you mentioned Sierra Leoneans? What was the like the crowd, the people who didn't know? Because even if there was a bike race in England, I'm
Yeah.
going to be honest, there's not going to be a lot of people
Yeah.
realistically, unless it's the big race that is going to be
Mm.
on the side of the street involved. What
Yeah.
were the people who were living who were on the side of the street as this race was going on? What was their reaction?
So I think I have to be careful, but I think this, for me, was the greatest strength of the Tour de Lunsar. The fact that Kareem has created this event for the community. Like it felt like a community event. I feel like if you're a robber, this was the time to go to everyone's houses because everyone everyone was there watching. No one was trading, no one was selling. I don't know if people had gone to work, but it felt like the whole community were there, from kids to old men to wives to and yeah, and everyone was getting involved. As you said, it is easy because the crit is like a bit like a basketball match. There's back and forth, there's always action. You can see who's winning, you can see who's at the back, you know. I feel like this was the greatest strength, that there was whole buy-in. You had the people who are known in the village for performing before every day. There was different types of I mean, there was a grand opening ceremony, but there was always some sort of ceremony, you know. I loved how he united the community. I've never, yeah, I think it's rare that you see this.
I think you mentioning this is kind of going kind of a little bit full circle here because you I want to touch back on perception of Africa. This event,
Yeah.
which you're saying was incredibly very community
Mm,
focused, and then
mm,
just maybe how other people would first perceive talk Dylan's or even know what's going on. And I
mm.
think that there may even be more. I'll have to experience it myself and go, but more of a community feel in Tour de Lunsar than the big races around the world, just because
Yeah.
of what you say. It's something very unique and special for that
Mm.
everybody, regardless if they understand what is going on,
Yeah.
they put their things aside and they want to get involved. They want to be involved in their community. And I think my thing with easy living is that
Yeah.
regardless of where you are in the world, whether it's Western world, Eastern world thing, if you have a strong community, you're going to live a good life. I
Yeah. Yeah.
believe,
Yeah. No, I
regardless of how
this as well. I agree with this.
and regardless of your class too. And I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing people miss is that you could have no money or you could have all the money, but
Yeah.
depending on how good your community is within your system, that's going to determine your happiness or your wealth. Not your
Yeah.
monetary wealth, but your wealth in
Yeah.
life. And so I think that's what you've described perfectly through this
Yeah.
event. And I, I definitely want to be part of the team. And I just want to shift as we kind of end this to
Yeah.
AFRICAP. And one thing that I've noticed over the last 2 years is that you do a lot of collaborations. There's a lot
Yeah.
of things with different people, different cycling shops, different
Yeah.
even it doesn't have to be cycling. It could be do
Yeah.
something else, but there's
Yeah.
always a collaborative feel, a community
Yeah.
feel. So
Yeah.
why collaborations? Why that approach? And why do you enjoy doing it?
Yeah, it's funny from a cynical perspective. I One of my friends posted some so I recently got into shooting on film, you know, like the old school cameras our parents used to use, where you didn't have the safety net of being able to view the picture and see if this is good or not. It's not something I ever thought about doing. One of the highlights of last year is there's this race in Senegal called the Carter Gori Island, where it's like 5 kilometers and you swim from the main line to this island. And some guys from London came to do it, and they came and documented it, and all of them were shooting on film. And then I started to give it a go. And one of the guys posted some of his pictures yesterday, and I was like, oh yeah, when I'm back, you got to shoot one of my campaigns. And he was like, oh, you know, and I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, your photos are good. And when you use Friends, it's cheaper. I'm sorry. It's like, it's either free or you get a discount. But also, you're giving a platform to your for your friends to showcase their work, and vice versa. and you're supporting people who you know, and you're building a community. I think with collaborations as well, it's a similar thing. It gives you the opportunity to come together and create something with people you know, so you know that there's a general buy-in or interest or appreciation for what you're doing, which you don't always know when. I mean, obviously, the more successful you go, people will want to collaborate with you, and often it will be for artistic reasons or whatever, but obviously for financial reasons. I think as people who, I mean, you'll be aware of some of the collaborations when Nike collaborated with Supreme or whatever. Sometimes it looks good, sometimes it's bad. You can spot a collaboration when it's just for the money and someone gets their own sneaker and the sneaker doesn't change, there's just colors or whatever and the person's name on it, as opposed to when people come together and actually create something. And it's always interesting, I think, to see what the result is when you come and partner up.
Kind of goes back to what we were talking about a little bit before, and you said there, give a platform, just to someone locally. I found this
Yeah.
and learned doing this through the podcast is that
Yeah.
when I have someone on here and I'm talking to them about their thing,
Yeah.
it's giving them a platform.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize at the start, but it's something special. It's something like I now take more seriously, but
Yeah.
I also just enjoy hearing their story, hearing them talking about it. And honestly, that's more interesting for me, you collaborating with a local photographer that you met
Yeah.
there and developing a campaign, because that's genuine. That's
Yeah.
actually like real life, as opposed to
Yeah.
the Nike and Supreme who've put the box logo on
Yeah.
there. And I think so much in our real world community, we can
Yeah.
learn so much right next door, from
Yeah.
those people,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, it doesn't have to be a huge podcast or a Netflix series or something to
Yeah.
learn something. We can have
Yeah.
these conversations with Bob down the road because,
Yeah.
he's lived a life, he's done
Yeah.
something. And I think that's the thing you've touched on and with your collaborations is, you're getting to know them. It's just that sharing of something. Once you've shared something like
Yeah.
doing a podcast together or doing a collaboration, it's a kind of weird bond that,
Yeah.
you've allowed yourself to go in with, to share something with somebody that forever is more than just, saying, hey, I liked your post. Regardless of how big it is, it's like we have this mutual interest in each other for however long.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're going to wrap it up here. Hammer,
Okay.
appreciate you coming on. Everyone go check out AFRICAP. It continues to be even more interesting. The film shots. I can't wait to see this
Yeah.
new campaign, this new collab.
Oh
But
yeah,
more
we've got
important,
a film coming soon. Actually,
oh,
I should just mention we shot something in Senegal, and again, actually, when these guys from London came to do this stream, I met a local videographer who makes a lot of music videos. We shot something in January. It's being edited now. I'm really, really excited about it, but that will be dropping very soon. And yeah,
can you
I'll share
tell us a little bit more, or is that on the side?
it.
Is
It's
it
to tell
about Senegal? Is it
stories.
about AFRICAP?
It's mainly about AFRICAP. Yeah. We don't have, we have a lot of beautiful images and I think some written pieces, but we don't have like a video which tells our story. So I'm hoping, not I'm hoping with this, I'm saying actually with this is going to fill that gap. I'm sure you'll appreciate it.
I can't wait. That sounds like it's going to be perfect. Sounds like it's the thing that will add to AFRICAP and everything else you do. I think you're a person that everybody should be following, and I think
Oh
the conversation we've had today is just reiterating to anybody,
yeah,
regardless of who you know or who you follow, to go and just talk to those, embrace those surroundings around you, get to know your community, and be involved, because you can live a much fuller life.
okay. I'm gonna hold you to participating in the Tour de Lunsar. Get your knees or your hips sorted, and let's see. I mean, your performance when we went to Brussels. I mean, you cycled, I think, from Bruges to Brussels on one leg. So imagine with two legs what you could do in Sierra Leone.
That was the start of my knee troubles. Everybody, we can put that to Hammer. It was the day that my knee blew up, and I cycled with one leg,
That's
correct, for
sports
60 miles.
determination. You could have tapped out, but nothing was stopping you.
No, I mean, what's my options? I'm going to get a thing from a train back to London. We've got to just get it done. And that's the thing with clippings. You can just keep on rolling anyway,
Yeah.
so it's fine. Anyway, everyone, keep it easy.